Okay, we're back. So I actually drilled my hole for the bail and for where the tube rivet is going to set. In your kit, you have a small piece of brass tubing. I don't know, I think it's about 3 inches long, and you're only going to need like a really small piece, but I made it long enough for you to hang on to. And just like the other rivets that we did for the previous project, you need a hole that is the exact size. So if you can see how that slides through there. But you need a hole that's the exact size as the tube you're using. So the number 30 drill bit in your kit, which is the biggest drill bit in your kit, is the one you're going to use for this. One thing that you might notice is, you're using a bigger bit and a thin piece of metal. Remember, we're using 22 gauge for the backing just because we're adding tabs this time. But when you drill that hole, you might end up with a little bit of a burr. So what you're going to want to do is just take your needle file, and sometimes just like, get back in here. Sometimes just like filing that really lightly is going to take that off, and you don't want any burrs on your metal for this process. It'll actually kind of mess up the tube rivet itself. Now for this process, there is a formula that is actually pretty critical, for the length of that tube. And let's see here, I have a little drawing here. And what I did is I measured the thickness of my metal. And this metal, even if it's 22 gauge or 18 gauge, it's going to be close enough. But if we measure that, and I don't know if we can see this here or not, move my big stupid head here. But I'm going to measure the edge of that. And this metal is about 1 millimeter thick. And it's really close. So it's like if you kind of generally use the 22 gauge or even the 18 gauge, they're both going to be about 1 millimeter thick, which is close enough for this process. So in my awesome drawing here, we'll say that this piece here is the sheet metal that we're using. And since we're only putting a tube rivet through one piece of metal, that's all we really have to worry about. I'm using this more as a decorative element. It will strengthen the bail as well, over time, but we're only going through one piece of metal. So you can see here that I have the metal thickness is 1 millimeter. I've already measured the diameter of the tube, which is 3 millimeters. So the way this formula works is you need about a half of the diameter of the tube sticking out on each side of the hole. So a better way to think about that is add 1, which is the thickness of the material, plus the diameter of the tube, which is 4. And that would leave us with 1.5 millimeters sticking out on each side. So, and if we're doing 2 pieces of metal, it's going to change a little bit, because now we have, and I don't have it written down here, so that's brilliant. But we have 2 pieces of metal, so it'd be 2 millimeters plus the diameter of the tube, which in this case is, again, 3. So you would cut your tube length at 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. I'm a mathematician, I guess. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're gonna cut this tube at 4 millimeter because we're going through one piece of metal. And so, hi Whitney, I'm recording a demonstration from my class.
Hello, I'm leaving.
Okay, that's my daughter. Can you see her? I don't know. All right, see it. Where are you going?
Thanks.
Okay, have fun.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, nothing like online schooling. So what I'm gonna do, and hopefully we can see this, I'm gonna measure 4 millimeters and make my mark. Just with a little Sharpie. Now, I'll be honest that tubes are not fun to cut. The trick to this is to cut very, very slowly. And the other thing is, like, once we're almost all the way through, what tends to happen is you'll get through, and since they're round, this little piece of tube is actually going to roll. So I usually try not to. Oop, and I'm making this look easy. See, the cutting slow and soft. Don't put a lot of pressure on this. But when you go all the way through, that little round tube wants to roll. And if it rolls on the floor, it's usually pretty hard to find. So let's see if we can see this. So I got a tiny little tube. Now, if you'll notice, there's a little burr on that thing. So this isn't fun either. So I'm going to take a needle file. And this is where these grooves on the bench pin are kind of helpful. But I need to get that burr off of there. Otherwise, it's not going to fit through my hole. All right. Oh, I'm out of focus here. So anyway, so this is going to fit through that hole. And what I want to do, if we can see that, is I want to try to get that to kind of stick about halfway or an equal distance on each side. Now this is a little tricky part, and I know I asked everybody to read their textbook, which I'm sure everybody did. And I do this a little bit differently than Tim McCrate. And Tim's an awesome metalsmith, but sometimes metalsmiths prefer using like dapping tools, which are like these round tools. They're almost like little balls on the end, and then they smack both sides. The problem with that is it usually ends up with kind of a weird indentation in the tube. So what I try to do is I try to flare out the side using a big center punch. And in the studio we have a bunch of different sizes of these, but this one should work really good for what we're doing. And in your kit, your center punch, and I just drilled a hole in a block of wood, so that'll hold it, which is pretty nice. So this ends up being a little bit tricky, and I'm hoping that I can keep this in focus for you and look what I'm doing and where the camera is going. But what I do is I set that tube on the center punch, and do not use your ball peen hammer. Use the rawhide mallet. And I'm just going to start to smack that a little bit, trying to get the one side to flare out. And this is getting a little loose. That's okay, but beautiful. And I dropped that. See how fun and easy this is? So I'll try it again. It wasn't flared out enough. And I am kind of smacking that pretty good here, and oh, there it is. I'm just trying to get that flared out. This is not going as good as I anticipated it would. But I think those are usually good demonstrations. Yeah, so that's not fitting through that, so it is flaring out a little bit. And we'll try this again. And it's really a matter of getting things started. I saw it flare that time. So if you actually, I don't know if you can see this in the video or not, but you can kind of see how that one side is flared out. So, and as I drop it, so it's really only coming out of the other side. So now that I put that rivet back in there, because it's flared, it's only gonna, it's gonna stop it from coming through. So now I can hit the other side, and this is gonna take a little bit of back and forth. Because once I flare out this other side, then the rivet won't, or the tube won't slide out of there anymore. But now I'm getting some more, once I got it started, I'm getting some more flaring there. So you can actually see how it won't come out. So now I'm going to flip it back over and do the other side a little bit more. And this is kind of the tricky part about this, is you really got to work it from both sides. Now flip it again. But I'm trying to stay as consistent as I can and keep the tube even. And this will become more important once I kind of smack this down a little bit farther. Yeah, now if you look at that, if we can see that in here, we can really see how that's flaring out. And the trick is I want to keep them even.